When I was 13 years old, I was in my health and science class. Not my favorite subject, you know? And I remember that we were talking about eating disorders, specifically anorexia and bulimia. Because as they taught me, they are the only eating disorders that exist in the world. But let me tell you a secret just between you and me. They are not. My teacher started explaining in a really simple way the concept of each one. Anorexia was about skinny girls that wants to be skinnier and skinnier, and that's why they hate eating. And bulimia was about weird people that for some reason apparently throw up all their food. I was so confused at that moment. I couldn't understand why on earth someone would do that to themselves. It was so stupid. 4 years later, I was diagnosed with anorexia and restrictive eating disorder. Probably, if you look at me, you don't think that I have anorexia or that I had it, because I'm not the image that you have learned about. I'm not crazily underweight or insanely thin. I just look normal. Normal is a funny word, isn't it? A 2018 study from the University of Melbourne shows that 1/3 of the patients with anorexia nervosa had all the cognitive features and complications of the disease without being underweight. This data challenges the definition of anorexia that we have learned all our lives, because the social perception of eating disorders, or EDs by short, is mainly based on the scale, even though they are psychopathologies. This generalized misconception results in the assessment of a mental illness based on a physical reference. The moment when society confuses a mental disorder with a physical disease, we can tell that society actually understands barely anything. And that's why I'm here, to help you understand. For the next 10 minutes, I could give you an informative talk about all the symptoms of all eating disorders known and to know, but I'm aware of two fundamental things. First, it will be boring as hell. And secondly, you won't be able to connect with that information, the same way I couldn't do it years ago in that class. So, instead of throwing a bunch of stiff data at you, today, I want to share with you what I know the best, my experience. Hi, I'm Chiara. I'm 18, I'm a student, a huge cat lover, a friend, a daughter, a sister, and also an anorexia recovered patient. I grew up in a small country named Paraguay, and by the age of 13, I became the youngest girl in the world to complete a full indoor rowing marathon. After that, I entered the Paraguayan national junior rowing team at 14. And by the age of 15, I already held 3 world records in the full, half, and ultra marathon. Again, I was the youngest girl in the world to achieve this at the time. This sounds like a successful and promising sports career. So you might be asking yourself, what happened? How did I go from being the young promise of rowing to an anorexia patient? You'll see, being an elite athlete at such a young age, and in general, involves a huge compromise and a lot of sacrifices. I used to train 4 to 5 hours every day with national and international coaches to improve all my skills. My body was my most precious tool. My body was a machine designed to execute the best of the best in terms of performance. After completing the ultramarathon, I turned 16. And I realized that I didn't want that life anymore. It stopped it being my dream. So I decided to quit. This decision was followed by an identity crisis, because all my life had been planned based on my sports career. And suddenly, I had nothing left. Everything around me started to change. My group of friends, my habits, and of course, my body. After quitting sports, I developed anxiety around training to the point that I wasn't able to set a foot inside the gym. I stopped all my activities for months. Consequently, my body looked different. and people around me started to noticing it. They pointed out with charming and charismatic comments how muscle was disappearing and fat was replacing instead. My mirror started noticing as well. And this situation got even worse when the 2020 quarantine began. I gained more weight, and the suggestions of starting a new diet were not long in coming. Just like that, one day, a magical diet came to my hands, with the essential promise of fixing all my problems. And there I was, locked, confused, frustrated, fat, and I thought, maybe it is time to change something. That's how I started my personal glow-up project. But I didn't know that that would be the starting point of my eating disorder. And no, I didn't wake up the next day saying, let's not eat anymore, because that's not the way it works. No one develops an eating disorder overnight. An ED is the sum of little actions that slowly take place, silently, to make us unable to notice them. Most of the time, these actions are disguised as behaviors that we believe to be normal. Just like starting a new life-changing ultra-restrictive diet to improve our willpower and discipline. It is a nicer way to say to starve ourselves, basically. And that's how I start with a manual on what, how much, and when to eat, alias diet. And before starting this, I said to myself, after you lose weight, you can eat normally again. Eventually, I lost all the weight, but I never ate normally again. Instead, I started creating my own manual with my own rules, my new life guide. At the beginning, it just contained a few. Don't eat bread, don't eat fried foods, don't drink soda. Healthy and innocent habits, right? Again, people around me began to realize the changes of my body. You look amazing, girl. Oh my God, quarantine was so good for you. My plan was working. I was in control again. We all know that since COVID appeared, life has become a little bit chaotic. We realize that we are not in control of most of the things that happen around us. During those peaks of uncertainty, more rules would emerge in my manual. Don't eat sugar, don't eat pasta, don't drink calories. They gave me back control. In a world where there were so many things out of my control, there was just one thing I could control. My body. If I'm in control of the way I look and what I eat, I'm in control of my life. That's the logic behind restrictive eating disorders. To understand a mental illness, you have to understand the logic that rules it. And anorexia is the master of disguise. It gives you an illusion of control, a comfort zone. However, as time goes by, more rules would emerge in your manual, and your comfort zone gets smaller and smaller until it suffocates you. When you suffer from anorexia, you are never alone. You have a moral voice inside your head that watches your every move. This is a smart voice that knows you more than anyone, and it also knows when to talk, what to say, how to attack. Don't eat that. You're already so fat. Are you eating that again? Oh my God, you're incapable of doing something for yourself. You said that you didn't want to eat that anymore. You are ruining everything again. I started listening to this voice because I was seeking control, but it was controlling me instead. My perception of the world completely changed. This is what most people see. This is what I used to see. Who likes math? Trust me, I've never been a huge fan of it, but I was forced to do it every day because I was seeing numbers everywhere, in every snack and every meal, in every outing with friends. I learned by heart the calories of each food. I memorized the ingredients of every dish that I could imagine. I was calculating all the time, adding, subtracting, dividing. This sounds tiring. And it was. Slowly, I stopped eating, so I didn't have to deal with it anymore. Slowly, I stopped going out with my friends to avoid the anxiety of not knowing how food was prepared caused me. Slowly, I was overtraining myself to not think about anything else. The question wasn't anymore, am I hungry? The question was, do I deserve it? Not eating was my safe place. Most of the people that suffers from ED are not able to recognize that their behavior is not normal. But that wasn't my case. I did realize that something was wrong with the way I was living. So one day, after thinking about it for months, I approached my mom, full of fear and shame. Crying, I told her what was going on with me. I was desperate for help. I couldn't deal with that situation on my own anymore. After that, I began my recovery. And recovery is anything but easy. Each day, you ask yourself if it is worth it. Scared of the changes of your body, scared of losing control. Recovery is a constant fight against everything that used to be your safe place. So many discussions against that voice take place inside your head that you just consider that giving up is easier. You can't beat it. But fortunately, and thanks to my close support network, I could. So today I'm here to share my story. Eating disorders are surrounded by misconception. And that's why there are 5 things that I want you to remember after leaving this place. 1. Anorexia and bulimia are not the only eating disorders. Have you ever heard about pregorexia or pica? What about OSFED or diabulimia? There are at least 12 classified and recognized eating disorders. And some of them are not even related to body image issues. But we don't hear about them because they don't match the definition of eating disorders that we have learned all our lives. We learn to link eating disorders with kindness and superficiality, when they are actually serious and deadly mental illnesses. Each eating disorder is equally dangerous and serious for the person who suffers from it. 2. Eating disorders do not discriminate. EDs are not exclusive diseases of rich girls that want to look like TV models. Eating disorders are not a choice. And they do not take into account who you are. They just happen. Eating disorders can happen to anyone, no matter race, gender, sexuality, social class, or age. 3. A person with anorexia or any eating disorder is not anorexic. I know this sounds contradicting, but the moment when you use anorexic as an adjective to define a person, you are taking their disease and making it part of their identity. And let me tell you something. My eating disorder is not me, and my eating disorder does not define who I am. This phenomenon mostly happens with mental illnesses, since no one says that a person that is suffering from cancer is carcinogenic, for example. Words are so much more powerful than we think, and saying, I'm anorexic, is totally different from saying, I'm going through anorexia. 4. Eating disorders do have a cure. One of the most popular myths about eating disorders is that they are for life. Once you have one, you will have it with you for the rest of your life. This is one of the most painful and hopeless things that people can say about eating disorders. I remember asking myself during my recovery, why should I put so much effort into this if I'm not going to recover anyway? But for whoever needs to listen to this. Trust me, recovery is worth it. Everything gets better after you recover. And you can do it. Life is waiting out there for you. I hope that now you are able to recognize that when we talk about eating disorders, what is eaten is not the problem. The body is not the problem either. They are just the little tip of the iceberg, the front cover of a deeper problem. Eating disorders go beyond superficiality, and it is time that we too begin to see beyond their surface. And the most important thing that I want you to remember after leaving this place is that eating disorders are not about food. Thank you.